From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we use the wind to power our windmills and the sun to power our sundials, and for everything else we use good old-fashioned fire. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Delighted you could join us this evening. Here's your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending the 2nd of May, 2025. Dateline Berlin, Monday, 28 April. The German states of Hesse and Bavaria announced this week they plan to begin what can only be called a political purge, whereby members of Alternative for Germany, the AfD, will be barred from joining the police and the civil service, and current members of the police and civil service, if they are found to be members of the number one most widely supported party in the country, which the AfD now is, well, they will be expelled from their jobs for harboring political views that are deemed unfashionable by the ruling globalist left establishment. The Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution, yes, that's a real thing, as Orwellian as it sounds, has designated the AfD as a right-wing extremist organization solely on the grounds that they don't sparkly heart the last 10 years of mass third world migration that nobody ever asked them if they wanted. And so, if you don't sparkly heart open borders, well, that makes you a right-wing extremist. So your party has to lose its funding, its members have to be thrown off their job, they should have their civil rights severely curtailed. So to put it simply, if you are a member of the most popular party in Germany that happens to be slightly to the right of Karl Marx, then you can only be half a citizen at best. You don't get your full civil rights. And isn't it fun watching Germany repeat all the same mistakes that made them the instigators of the two bloodiest wars in all of world history? Because what happens when you take a popular, mainstream, middle-of-the-road party and try to outlaw it and shunt it off into the margins? Well, that is exactly how you create extremism where no extremism existed previously. If Bavaria hadn't tried to ban the National Socialists, would their views have been as extreme as they wound up being? Maybe, but it's impossible to know. Would they ever have had any need of a rabble-rouser like Mrs. Schicklgruber's little boy? Maybe, maybe not. What is it about the German character that makes them always invariably default to authoritarianism and political purges and mass censorship? And sure, instead of nibbling around the edges, let's ask the real, larger questions. Can the German people be trusted with democracy? And more importantly, is a unified German state a good thing for the larger world? For this reporter would submit that it is not. And I would further submit that the historical record will back me up on this. There was no nation-state called Germany until the end of the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. You had 3 kingdoms, you had a few principalities, and you had a collection of smaller duchies and margravates and electorates and so on. Within 45 years of that unification, Germany instigated the most horrific war in world history. Within another 20 years after that, they had instigated a second world war that was orders of magnitude more horrific than the first one. For 45 years after that second war, the issue of the partition of Germany and its capital city very nearly instigated a third world war that would have been far worse than the first 2 wars combined. So here is the big question. Has the wider world gained any benefit from a unified and democratic Germany? Because from where I'm sitting, they have not. The unification of Germany has arguably caused more death and human suffering than any other political event in the history of the planet, and I think the rest of us are entitled to be pretty damn sick of dealing with it. Now they are trying to ban the opposition party for having views that nobody would have seen as being remotely objectionable or controversial as recently as 10 years ago. I, for one, have had just about enough of German domestic politics burning down the world, and they appear to be going back down that same old road all over again. And when all the killing is finished and all the cities lie in ruins, who's going to be expected to go in and fix everything? We will. Again. So I'm stating my view right here and now, backed up by more evidence than I should need, that the German people cannot be trusted with having a unified country, and they cannot be trusted with a democratic form of government. I am not here to dig into the reasons why they are so bad at self-governance. I'm just here to say that they have lost the opportunity to try. I am here to say break up Germany before they can burn down civilization for a third time. Dateline Madrid, Tuesday, 29 April. Western Europe underwent its worst mass power outage in at least the last 50 years this week, and I'll give you one guess what the cause was. Yeah, you got it. It happened because the Spaniards have converted vast sectors of the power grid away from reliable energy sources like oil and gas and toward wildly unreliable energy sources like windmills and solar panels and magic unicorn farts. I know. What a shocking development this is. Who could have guessed such a thing would ever happen? It was like a bolt from the blue, except that a bolt from the blue contains more electricity than unicorn farts. But since climate cultism is very much a state religion in many parts of the world, the Spanish government tried very hard at first to put some lipstick on the pig and blame the power outage on a, quote, freak weather incident, which caused many Spaniards to say, what freak weather incident are you talking about? Exactly, we didn't see any freak weather incident. All we saw was the freaking lights go out. about. And then the government, much to its own embarrassment, was forced to explain that, when we said freak weather incident, what we actually meant was it was unusually cloudy for a couple of days. And presumably the unicorns weren't farting hard enough. And it really says a lot for the potential of so-called renewable energy that your entire national power grid can be defeated by clouds. And I'm sure the people of Spain and Portugal, who were also affected by the mass outage, are really delighted to be living in a world where they pay about 5 times more for electricity than they did just a few years ago, and their reward is no fucking electricity. It really fills one with confidence in the capabilities of the people in charge, doesn't it? But the government wasn't quite done trying to cover its ass yet, because of course they weren't. When they tried to chalk the whole thing up to a freak weather event, and everybody responded correctly with laughter and derision and mockery, they then, ever so briefly, tried to claim that there must have been some sort of terrorist cyber attack that crippled the electrical grid. But then, in an all too rare case of journalists actually doing journalism, some reporters went and asked the firm that runs the national power grid if cyber terrorism was a plausible explanation for the outage, and the guy on the other end of the line said, nah, there wasn't any cyber attack that we're aware of. So only then, when they were completely out of lies to tell, did the government finally grudgingly concede, okay, fine, it was the clouds. Now, according to the Spanish press, upwards of 150,000 people had to be rescued from inoperative subway cars because, what, you guys never heard of a backup power supply for your public transit? And hundreds of hospitals and old age homes were left scrambling trying to keep their patients alive when the power suddenly and completely failed. So, like, your hospitals don't even have backup generators? Because I always kind of thought that was a fairly crucial thing for a hospital to have, but let me guess, defeating the sun monster is so important, and fossil fuels are such pure evil that we can't even have gas-powered backup generators for our damn hospitals, and they can't keep a couple of captive unicorns on hand to fart up some emergency power because, animal rights and all that. So yeah, very, very excellent look, Spain. It's great to see entire countries failing at things that civilization had figured out like 120 years ago, like how to build a reliable power grid. And I'm sure all those hospital patients who perished when their ventilators switched off would have been more than happy to sacrifice their lives on the altar of reducing the global mean temperature by 0.7 degree 100 years from now. I know that I, for one, rest easier at night knowing Western civilization has all of its priorities firmly in order. Dateline Minneapolis, Wednesday, 30 April. Minnesota governor and failed vice presidential candidate Tampon Tim Walz gave an interview this week in which he revealed the primary reason he was tapped last year to be Kamala Harris's running mate. And here's the quote. I will let it stand as a monument to itself. Quote, I knew I was on the ticket. I would argue because we did a lot of amazing progressive things in Minnesota to improve people's lives, but I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this. And look across those swing states, with the exception of Minnesota, we didn't get enough of those votes, end quote. So, there's a couple things that jump out at you immediately about this quote. The first one is, here we have a guy who was on the last presidential ticket less than half a year ago, who is matter-of-factly conceding that the Democrats are so far down the rabbit hole of identity politics, they think they need an interpreter to be able to talk to straight white men, which is still, whether they like it or not, and we know they don't, the biggest demographic group in the country. So they have spent the last 30 years or more demonizing straight white guys as the lowest form of life on the planet, who are nothing but a source of toxicity and misogyny and this ism and that phobia, and what? They look up one day having nominated Kamala Harris for the presidency, or I guess selected is the more correct term, and it only then occurs to them that, hey guys, I think it might be impossible to win a national election with only women and minorities. Who would have guessed? So you know what we need now? We need a white guy whisperer. We need a guy who can speak to these disgusting savages on their own level. And then they looked around and said, shit, we don't have many straight white guys to choose from, do we? It's kind of like when Joe Biden promised to choose a black woman running mate, and then they handed him a list of the prospective candidates, and he said, there's only 3, and 2 of them are Susan Rice and Barbara Lee. Jesus Christ, what have I got myself into here? And so, that's how we wound up with the gift of Vice President Kamala Harris. And she, in turn, because there's nothing new under the sun, because everything is a feedback loop of awfulness, she was handed a starkly similar conundrum where she needed a straight white guy on the ticket, and they gave her no better option option than this ridiculous bumbling doofus whose main claim to fame as a governor was having led the fight to put feminine hygiene products in the boys' bathroom in Minnesota public schools. And he changed the Minnesota flag into a Somalia flag. That's just a fun bonus. It's the civil rights struggle of our time, you know? And he enjoys taking groups of young boys into the woods to talk about their sexuality, which I'm sure there is a perfectly innocent explanation for. And the other thing that jumps out at you about this quote, it's the fact that he seems to be trying to imagine what it is that straight white guys spend their time doing. And he reduces it to watching football, fixing their truck. And he gives the whole game away right there, doesn't he? He gives away the fact that he is just cosplaying here, trying to play a role. You know why? Because no man in the real world actually uses terms like fixing my truck. No man in the real world has ever said, sorry, I can't go to the game today, I'm fixing my truck. If you're working on your truck, you either say, I'm working on my truck, or you say the specific thing you're working on. You say, I'm changing my plugs, I'm swapping out my alternator, I'm replacing my brake pads. You don't say, I'm fixing my truck. I'm fixing my truck sounds like something a woman would say when she is imagining how men talk to each other. It was Senator Mike Lee of Utah who had perhaps the most fitting retort to this story when he said on the platform previously known as Twitter, quote, I am a white guy. I've been a white guy for 53 years, and I have no idea what it means to code talk to white guys. Please enlighten me, end quote. Dateline Liverpool, Thursday, the 1st of May. In news from the British Premier League, Liverpool striker Cody Gakpo scored a goal to help his team to a 5-1 home victory over Tottenham Hotspur last Sunday at Anfield, and he received an official reprimand from the Football Association for the shockingly unacceptable display that he engaged in immediately after scoring the goal. And what dastardly act in question was he guilty of? Well, he removed his jersey to reveal a t-shirt that said, I belong to Jesus. And yeah, there's a few things we need to get out of the way right here at the top. First, would there have been any official reprimand if it was a shirt that said Allahu Akbar? I think we all know the answer to that one. Second, I think one has to stand back and marvel at the fact that a British citizen can be disciplined by the British Football Association for an expression of Christian faith undertaken in a country where Christianity is still, ostensibly at least, the official state religion. Third, I think there was an easy way that he could have escaped from any censure or punishment by simply saying, no, the shirt doesn't refer to Jesus Christ, it refers to my gay lover whose name is Jesus. If he had gone that route, not only would there have been no punishment, but he probably would have been named the Grand Marshal of this year's Liverpool Pride Parade. This weekend's incident represents just the latest salvo in the Football Association's ongoing effort to stamp out public expressions of Christianity in a country where they still sing God Save the King before the start of every match, which, I don't know, seems like a bit of mixed messaging, don't you think? Now, earlier this year, Crystal Palace captain Mark Gooey was twice reprimanded by the FA for having written in consecutive weeks, I love Jesus and Jesus loves you on the rainbow armband that the league required him to wear in celebration of gay something or other. And let's take a quick look at the FA bylaw that the players are accused of having violated. Quote, equipment must not have any political, religious, or personal slogans, statements, or images. Players must not reveal undergarments that show political, religious, personal slogans, statements, or images, or advertising other than the manufacturer's logo, end quote. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, wait, isn't a rainbow armband, by definition, a political statement? Well, yes it is. But that's not important now. The important thing to remember is that in the free and democratic United Kingdom, your employer can and will compel you to engage in public celebrations of non-normative sexuality, whether or not you approve of such things. But if you try to engage in any display of your Christian faith, and especially in such a way that sullies the dignity of the holy and sacred rainbow armband, well, you are going to be in a hell of a lot of trouble, pal. So you tell me, as a practical matter, which thing has all the features of a state religion and which thing doesn't? I expect they'll have to change the lyrics to the national anthem pretty soon at this rate. God save our rainbow king, we all love buggering and all gay things. I probably shouldn't give the bastards any ideas, should I? Dateline New York City, Friday the 2nd of May. If this headline doesn't make you want to visit the Big Apple immediately, you must have some major malfunction. Quote, illegal alien accused of attempting to rape corpse on subway. Felix Rojas, a 44-year-old Mexican, has been arrested on charges that, I think the headline sums it up pretty well without having to go into any further graphic detail. And how have the fake news media reported on the story? Well, I think you know how. It's quite the recurring theme for him at this point. They are refusing to mention that the accused homosexual cadaver rapist is in the country unlawfully, opting instead to refer to him as a, quote, Brooklyn man, which I'm sure the residents of Brooklyn are just delighted about. Now, what was the first thing that jumped out at me when I saw this headline and read this story? It was not the fact that a guy stands accused of attempting to violate a dead man on a subway train, though don't get me wrong, that was a close second. The very first thing I thought was, so New York City subway cars just have random corpses in them? Like nobody goes through once or twice a day to clean the corpses out? That's the current state of things in NYC? Because I don't know about you, but that makes me want to book my vacation right away. Honey, kids, we are going to New York City for some cultural edification. And if we're riding the subway and you happen to see a Mexican man making sweet, sweet love to the moldering cadaver of a homeless drunk who expired several days ago, don't make a big deal of it. Just try to avert your eyes and ignore the smell. We are not from here, so this must be just the way they do things. I mean, why let a perfectly good dead body go to waste, but it is still perfectly useful to any Mexican necrophiliac illegal aliens who happen to be visiting? That's just what a tolerant, pluralistic society looks like, kids. So aren't you glad we made this trip? We have only been mugged 3 times so far, and even that experience has expanded our cultural horizon. Because now we all know how to say, hand over your money and jewelry or I will fucking gut you like a fish in Senegalese, Swahili, and Hindustani. And who knows, maybe they'll start putting that on the tourism billboards next year. Come to New York City and get mugged in half a dozen exotic languages while you watch a decomposing body get sodomized by a dude from Guadalajara. If that's not a dream vacation, I don't know what the hell is. And if Jill Biden was here right now, she would probably say, hey, don't knock it till you try it, buddy. Sex with corpses can be very gratifying. And I feel like I should probably stop talking now. So here is where I toss it over to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, a man who only copulates with creatures that currently have a heartbeat, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.